once we're good. Are you good? And Stella's good? Okay, here we go. Keith. That's just a sound check, so then when we edit them together, we start at the sound.
Yep.
And then it makes it easy for us to edit. So, all right, Keith, so let's start off just by telling me when did you start working here at George H.?
In August of 1982.
Okay. So, and are you still working here?
No.
Okay, so when did you retire?
I retired in February of 2015.
Okay, so 82 to 15. So
32 and a half, something like that.
years. Okay. And how old were you when you started working here?
What, I was 21.
Okay, so was this like your first quote unquote real job, or had you
No,
worked?
I worked a couple other jobs before this.
Okay, what were those jobs?
I worked on a ski lift at Sierra,
Okay,
and then I came back and got in a laborers union and worked in Aptos on some seawalls, and then I was digging a basement when I got the phone call from my father-in-law, Bill Lynn, who was also a sheet metal worker here from the 60s, and he asked me if I wanted to drive a truck. So
Okay.
I jumped on that.
okay, so that's how you got this job?
Yeah.
Okay, and so you mentioned you were in the union in your previous job. Was that the same sort of thing in terms of coming here, or did you have to go through an apprenticeship here, or?
Yeah, it was a laborers union I was in previously.
Okay.
And then this is a sheet metal. And I was actually just a truck driver, cleanup kid when I started here.
Okay,
And then I saw what they were, what it was all about, because I didn't know a lot about sheet metal.
right.
And it looked exciting.
Okay. And what was exciting about it? What made it look exciting?
Well, I like to build things, and they had some big fun toys, and looked like a neat place to work.
Right.
You know, I was cleaning up behind the shears and everything like that every day, so I got to see what they were building, and it was a good introduction.
Okay. Yeah, so that was my next question. So as you went through, what was your job description initially, and what that job entailed, and then how it evolved to you ended up becoming the
Shop foreman.
foreman, right? So how did your career here sort of evolve?
So I was a truck driver, delivery kid, shop cleanup guy for the first, from 82 to sometime in 83 I got into the union. And then I took 3.5 years to get through the apprenticeship. And 87, I believe I got I was a journeyman, and then in May of 89, I became a shop foreman.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, lost my train of thought.
That's okay. So what did your job entail, or what were the duties? What were the
Well, I would load up trucks in the morning, drive them to the different job sites. We had jobs up in San Francisco, we had them in Pleasanton, we had them in Monterey, and Salinas. You know, we had a lot of big work everywhere at that point in time. We were doing a lot of big jobs. San Jose a lot. And come back, sometimes load up a second time, sometimes clean the shop up, come in on the weekends, wash the trucks that were brought to the yard, you know, on Saturday mornings.
Okay. So it was a Monday through Saturday?
Monday through Fridays, full 8 hours, and Saturday was a half a day.
Wow, okay. And that was your schedule basically for that entire time?
For the first probably year and a half maybe, or something, before I got into the apprenticeship.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, for those of the people who watch this who don't understand how all that works, so the apprenticeship, tell us what that means, or how that works.
So when I saw what everyone else was doing and everything, and I wanted to move out of that picking up stuff and delivering stuff, I went and took a couple of tests. You take an aptitude test and a math test at the Union Hall, and you pass those and you get on a list, and then once you get to the top of that list, which usually it took about 6 months or so, I was called into school in September, on that September, and then you go to school for 4 years, and you kind of work at your own pace at school in the union. In that, at that time, now it's a different, changed a bit, and you become a journeyman, and then you know, that's, you can become, you know, a shop journeyman or a field journeyman or a journeyman that's above other journeymen that are watching other journeymans, you know, like field foreman basically. There's different levels, but.
Okay. And tell us, if you could, what the union, what the benefits are of being in the union, or how that history sort of evolved in terms of what's appealing about it, or why is that important?
Well, I think the union worked out really well for me and my family. I mean, it brought good wages, good benefits. I think that the company I worked for was a really good company and probably didn't need the union possibly, but there are a lot of companies that you do need something like that to help keep, you know, a fair wage and benefits to be able to live in this area. That's my opinion about the union.
Okay. So you said you started here in 82, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what memories do you have of working for, well, first of all, was Grandpa Wilson, was George H. around when you started, or had he?
George would come in when I started with a walker and walk around the shop and look at things, and then probably about a year or 6 months, maybe a year, he would drive up to the door on Bulkhead Street at the old shop and sit in his car out there. He had a driver. He wasn't driving, but he had a driver. And look inside and watch, you know. So he was involved all the way. And but I had a couple of quick little conversations with him, but nothing.
Were any of them, were they just like, hey, how you doing? Or were any of them like, hey, you're not doing this right, or hey, you got...
No, I never had him critique me.
Okay, okay. So a couple other people we spoke to had mentioned that, where he'd drive up and, hey, you know, he thought about doing it this way and that way, even into his 90s. He's still, you know, asking these questions and very sharp, you know.
Oh, he is very sharp, and he was always looking at what was going on, what was being made, and how it was being made, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, and then, so what memories do you have of working for Jim?
Well, Jim, on Saturday mornings when I was out washing those trucks, was walking his dog Covey around and throwing a ball for him in the parking lot. But I always had a really good relationship with Jim, I thought. I mean, I enjoyed working for Jim and with Jim.
Okay.
And I never saw a bad side of him. I mean, you know, you saw him get upset, but there was a reason for it when he did. So I thought he was a pretty fair person.
Okay. Yeah, that was my follow-up. So what was his personality like? What were his demands in terms of the standard he set as the leader that kind of filtered down to you guys?
Yeah, he just very level, you know. I mean, he could have, I'm sure, lots of problems in the background in his life that were going on with the company, but he never brought them to whatever you and him were involved with, you know. I mean, you didn't get a bad thing from him because of something else that was going on. Usually he was focused on what he was trying to get you to understand.
Okay.
So.
And so what were your, in terms of your standard of work and his demands, did that take you a while to sort of understand what he expected, or was that immediate, like, man, this guy's on me, or this guy's on it, I got to make sure I'm on it as well?
I always kind of like to do things right, and he liked that. But there was, you know, when I first started, Armando Martinez, which I don't know if he'll make it on here because he's a tough one to nail down. I worked with him a lot in maintenance when I was doing the shop cleanup and everything, and he told me, watch out around here, you do everything right, don't ever think there's no one watching you, because everybody, the Wilsons know everyone in town. And they will see you out there driving, you know, erratically if you're driving wrong or anything. So that was a good warning up front, first of all. And, you know, Jim was just I think I tried to do my best around here. I think he was happy with what I did, I hope.
Okay. And going back to when you first started here in the early 80s, so you started 82, and if my memory's correct, that was the year of there was a couple big floods in Santa Cruz's history, but there was the one in 82.
It rained and rained and rained.
Yeah, so take us back to that time. What was it like in terms of just in the town, and then in terms of the company, and the either the stresses it put on the company or the demands and the...
Well, I don't think I was at George Wilson when that started. I think that was early 82, and I was working at Brown's Bold Ranch, actually.
Okay.
Before that.
So you came on post-flood.
Yeah.
But then what was it like when you started here in terms of, I would imagine if they're recovering from a flood, not only the company but the city, probably a high stress environment or busy
I don't
environment.
remember a lot of damage from that flood here. And you're downtown, but I wasn't down there when it happened. I was, they had some problems with the San Lorenzo River up in Belton area and everything. And at the beaches, they had a lot of tidal stuff that happened. And, along the coastline, on the houses along the coastline. But I don't remember anything drastic going on when I got to the company.
Okay, in terms of the environment, in terms of the location of the business. But I mean, just the business in general, like, was it pretty chaotic when you started? Because in other words, did the flood give the company more projects that suddenly, hey, we need to rebuild this?
Not like the earthquake.
Okay,
the earthquake did
that was
exactly,
the next one I was going to get to.
No, I don't remember. I mean, we were busy when I started. I was driving a lot. We were, I remember coming to work and it was all go, go, go.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing a lot of work at Kaiser down in Moss Landing, a lot of painting. I did a lot of painting as well when I was a truck driver and everything, and an apprentice as well. So.
Okay. So you mentioned it. So what were your memories of the earthquake of '89 in terms of
that was
where you were and how that affected you and the city and the company?
Well, I'd just gotten off work and picked up my two kids. I had one in my arm and one on my hand at a daycare, and when the earthquake hit and the fireplace chimney inside the house came down right there, and I was standing in the front door, and I was just thinking, boy, I hope this thing was close by, because my wife was in San Jose working, and I was thinking, this thing, it really shook. And when I got back, I went and got my kids at home, and then I went down to the shop in the morning, and all the plumbing shelves had fallen over. They were all a bunch of stand-up shelves in the room, and they had all fallen over onto the front door, on the door in the breezeway, so no one could get in through that way. But, and the building was cracked really bad, and it was an old grocery store, I think, originally. And it was pretty beat up, and people were afraid to go in, and it was, but it created a lot of work for us. I mean, we were very busy and running around town, fixing water heaters and all kinds of broken plumbing, and
So you knew coming into work, it was this, I mean, normally it is, but especially at that time, it's go time.
It was going to be a couple of months of,
And is that how long
running.
It lasted, or in terms of the hectic pace of go, build, rebuild was a couple months, or even longer? Or?
I don't remember I mean, we worked on the county building, had some big units that came sliding off, partway off their stands, so we had to get them put back on, and a lot of residential stuff that was, people were not having water and gas, and
Right. Yeah, no, I was
exciting.
here, I remember it as well. How much pride did you take in working here, having George H. Wilson on your uniform, so to speak?
A lot. It's a good company, good people, good company. They want you to do it right. I want to do it right. So I thought we meshed really well, in my opinion. I mean, that was another thing that I was told when I started here, is that we do it the Wilson way, which was, there's people from before me that were shop foremans and field foremans, and they did things a certain way. They didn't cut corners. Everything was done for longevity and, to look good. and that's the way we did business.
So, and that was just something, like you said, it was just sort of, you were indoctrinated, so to speak. Like, hey, this is how it's done. This is the Wilson way. And
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people come from other companies, because you're a union and you get busy, you hire people, and they're trying to tell you, hey, you can do it this, we can do that, it's like, and you have to explain to them somehow that we can, and we know we can, and we see it, but that's just not the way we do it. And it's not that much longer to do it this way, and it just looks neater and cleaner.
Right. So we talked about Jim a little bit and you seeing Grandpa. So now let's go to Tom and Blue in terms of having them take over and what your impressions of them were, your relationship.
Yeah. Both of them are a lot like their dad. I mean, they're a lot different. Tom's a lot different than Blue. Tom's really easygoing, got a lot on his plate all the time, always grabbing more than he should. Blue as well, a lot on his plate, but a little bit harder to get to know Blue. But I think at the end I felt a lot more comfortable with Blue than I did throughout the years working with Blue. I never had any bad times with Blue, but I just felt like Jim and Tom were easier to talk to, and Blue was a little bit on the outside.
Okay. And if you were to compare Jim and Tom, you said there were some similarities. What was similar? What was different?
Well, I think that Jim is definitely a mix of Blue and Tom. Tom's a little, I don't know. I'm going to get myself in trouble on this. And you're leading me into
No. I'm just curious how it was, working for the dad and then working for the son in terms of, like you said, the son's a little maybe mellower or
yeah, I would say
Tom
is a little easier going than his dad. Blue is probably like maybe a young Jim that I knew Jim in '82. He wasn't young, but he was a little more forceful. And as time went on, he softened. He seemed to soften, but he also had his kids really doing the not the dirty work, but the keeping things in line. And he was able to be more friendly, I think.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just curious. I didn't want to make you think I'm trying to trap you. When you hear George H. Wilson, what do you think of? What comes to mind?
Red trucks. Okay. Quality, longevity. Been here a long time. I think that they have a big clientele out there. People that have used them over and over and know who they are and what they represent. That's what I think of with George Wilson.
Okay. And when you first started working here at the age of 21, at what point do you remember that you said, "This is something I could see myself sticking around"? I'm sure there were people here who had been here a long time, and you're coming in as a young guy. And so, do you remember at one point where you just said, "You know what? I kind of like it here. I'd like to stay. I'd like to,
pretty quickly
make a career."
I mean, when I was still driving the truck, I was pretty sure I wanted to be in this business and I wanted to be with this company. I think I got really lucky that I met the gal I met, which if she's watching, and her dad was Bill Lynn, who was the stainless steel guy here when I started. He started in 60 something, I think, and his son, he has two sons that are sheet metal workers, not here, they weren't at the time. And then my wife's brother, which is his stepson, because that's my wife's stepfather, is also a sheet metal worker who worked here. And he was working here when I started here. We were working on the Crow's Nest. And they got me into this, and I really liked it. I liked what they did, so I thought I wanted to be here.
Okay. And what does it mean to kind of walk around the area? You mentioned a couple of them already, something like the Crow's Nest or some of these other sort of iconic Santa Cruz buildings. So what does it mean for you to be able to walk around and know you've been a part of building it, basically?
I like it. I was making a list before this, and it's just amazing the amount of the things that we worked on. You know, the lighthouse at the harbor, the roof there, and some big copper chimney tops out at the Filizzetti house out at by KSCO. And a lot of really neat architectural projects we did. A lot of big the science building at UCSC, a lot of very large stainless steel ductwork and plenums and things that were pretty impressive.
Is there one in your memory in particular, or one that you take, special pride in terms of just
I really
it was
like that.
difficult, a little more difficult or a little more challenging, but you were able to do it or something like that?
Yeah, I was pretty happy to be involved in that UCSC science building. There was a lot of very large stainless plenums that were very intricate. A lot of corners and things had to be missed, and a lot of measuring and checking and double checking, and then nothing could be made in one piece because it was way too big. So a lot of pieces that had to come together to fit, and it worked out really well.
And so, do you remember how long something like that took?
That job, we actually inherited that job from a company that couldn't get it done, which we did a lot of. And we probably spent at least 2 years on that project.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of duct.
Just because of all those little things you mentioned, those little details of...
Well, there's just it was a lot of welded stainless steel ducting for fume exhaust for a science building. It has a lot of chemicals going through it, and they don't want any air leakage at all. And a very large building as well.
Right. I'm picturing that building now in my mind, going, yeah, that was significant. Do you consider yourself, when you look at what you did, to be sort of an artist in a way, like what your work represented in terms of being in the public?
I think that my guys were artists. I think that the guys that worked for me, they were good, and I could steer them, and I could help them, and I could make sure they had what they needed. But these guys, we had good people. We hired some good people. We heard, by hearsay somebody was good, and we would try to get them, and we had really good people working for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you did sort of see them as artists.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And what are you most proud of when you look back at your career here?
Well, I'm glad that I was able to make these people hopefully happy with what I gave them, and I'm happy with what they gave me, and I'm glad I was able to stay in Santa Cruz, work in Santa Cruz, and I'm happy with my career.
Talk a little bit, if you could, about kind of the culture here in terms of, you mentioned some of your guys you saw as artists, and I'm curious to hear about sort of the camaraderie or the brotherhood and sisterhood too, because obviously there's women here, but just sort of the culture and the camaraderie around coming to work every day.
I thought it was, I haven't worked at a lot of places. My wife's worked at a few places. I hear the hearings, and my brother, I got a lot of brothers and sisters. This place seemed like people got along pretty well. The shop was, people would jab and bother each other. Just, it was pretty good camaraderie. And if somebody was struggling with something, there was always other people's brains coming in to help find a solution to it, and there was always something like that going on. So I thought that people got along really well here. And
you look back at the relationships. You mentioned your wife, obviously. You met her here, or you met her just through? No, I met her just out of high school. Oh, okay. She went to high school with me, but I met her after high school, and then her dad got me in here. Okay. So, and where did you go to high school? Aptos High. Aptos High, there you go. Yeah. Okay. Couple Mariners in here, obviously you met. I'm a Cardinal, but that's all right. Yeah, I know. Don't hold it against me. So the camaraderie's good. So in terms of the relationships you built here, are there friendships that you started here that you still enjoy today? Oh yeah. Well, you work for 30-something years with people
and they become either your friends or your enemies, I guess. I have friends, a lot of friends that came and went and, you know, are out there, yeah.
Okay. Any funny or crazy stories that you can reflect back on and say, wow, that one was a doozy, whether it was something around work or a project or something happening to someone or any kind
I don't really have. I mean, the most fun and the stories were at the picnics probably, you know, but I don't have any at the top of my head. But
Okay.
the company picnics were pretty exciting usually.
Okay, where were they usually held?
They started, when I started, they were at Aptos Park in Aptos, and then they moved to De La Viega for a little bit, and then went to Harvey West, and then ended up at the Boardwalk was the last few that they had.
Okay.
And they also had, before I got here, I missed out on it, was the I guess at the Sunroom they had some parties
the
at the
Coconut
Sunroom,
Grove?
the Coconut Grove and stuff, yeah.
Okay.
And of course, I don't know, I'm sure someone's brought up the bathtub boat races at the harbor, I would hope.
No, tell us
yeah.
about that.
You know, Wilson's and Santa Cruz yachts, you know, Bill Lee yachts, and a lot of other people would enter this I don't know, contest basically down at the harbor, right near the launch ramp. And Wilson's had built a couple of boats, aluminum like patio boats, kind of, with bathtubs set into them. There was like 6 or 8 bathtubs that would work with a lever. You would turn a paddle wheel on the back of this thing. So we'd have about 25 to 30 people on this thing, and all these other boats would have their crews, and we would race from one point in the harbor to another point in the harbor. And we had a water gun on the front that would pump water, and it was a really good time. And Jim Wilson was very involved. Mike Reitman at the time was the man running the gun up front. He was the vice president at the time, and it was pretty exciting.
And was it essentially for bragging rights, or was there anything on the line in terms of...
No, I don't know if there was pretty much just bragging rights.
Right.
Just a lot of noise and ruckus and...
Okay, so those were famous.
Oh yeah.
And how long did those...
Well, I only caught the last 2.
Okay.
So I think it must have ended around 83 or something.
Oh, okay. So, and for all you knew prior to that...
But no, they were
gone-
before that, because there's pictures upstairs, and my wife was involved in them. She was, because her dad was there before.
Okay, that sounds like good.
Yeah.
And so and then getting back to the picnics, what made those...
Just
What they were.
everybody, there was, you throw alcohol into anything, it becomes fun. I don't mean to be, you get people relaxed and, you know, and everybody gets along anyway, and there's always, you know, horseshoe competitions and bocce ball and everything else. It's just a good time.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And the people from the company themselves would get together at 5 o'clock in the morning to prep the food and cook the food, you know, so it was put on by ourselves at the time.
Right, so it was everyone contributing and then everyone
Yep.
enjoying.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so, and how has retirement treated you? Do you miss it?
I miss it a little bit, but not too much. I'm working all the time. I've been staying busy,
Okay.
which is good. You need to stay busy.
What do you miss about it?
The people mostly. It's easy to get lonely. It's easy to don't put. It's, you know, you're around people all the time for 30-something years, and all of a sudden you're not. You know, so you got to get out and keep moving, and work is good.
So is that something you faced in the initial part of your retirement? Like, wow, I'm kind of...
Well, I'd heard it from other
lonely
people.
here, or I'm kind of...
I'd heard it from other people that had retired. They said, you know, you really got to move. You got to get, you know, even though you think you got a lot of things to do, you know, you got to get out and move and be around people. And I think that was a good advice. I think that everybody craves people somewhat.
Okay, see, that's good. You took that to heart.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, or for people watching that you want them to know or you'd like them to know?
Can't think of anything offhand.
Okay, yeah, because you mentioned just the sort of the pride that everyone took in working here. And did you, oh, that was my other question. So when you went out into the community and said, hey, I'm with George H. Wilson, we're here to build a science building or repair this or fix that or build this, what was the community's reaction when they knew that you represented George H. Wilson?
I believe that when people saw George Wilson show up, and still do today, I believe, they know that they've got the right people out there. I mean, I think that I've been personally on jobs where other people have been doing things, and we've come in along, because there's been a problem, and I just think that you can just see that people know that, the approach is good and it's going to be a good job.
So that's something you got from just being out, that sort of people were like, oh, it's George, it's the red trucks, it's the company, we know we're good, we don't have to worry about, is this going to be good or is it going to be quality, or are they going to cut corners?
Right. No, I believe that people believe that for sure.
Okay. Well, I think that's about everything I have here in terms of what we wanted to cover. So hopefully that wasn't too painful.
I want to edit that thing.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do with this?
So we're going to turn it into it's a full-blown documentary on the company in celebration of the 100th, when they turn 100 in a year and a half or 2 years. So it'll be a documentary that'll appear on community TV, and then it'll be available for